Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of Finding the Voices. Would love to hear where you are watching us from. And today we are going to be focusing on People of the World series. And as you can see, we already have our special guest, Dr. Michael Nuccitelli. He is a New York licensed psychologist, cyber psychology expert, and internet safety educator. So this is one of the topics I have been waiting for. We are going to be talking about cyberbullying, cyberstalking, cybercriminal mind. And I know that many of our young listeners and even adult has been victim of that, and we don't talk about it. So today we are going to use this time to hear from Dr. Michael, his expert opinion, his experiences, and hopefully after 1 hour we will come out with more knowledge on how we can be better prepared to to handle such situation and be not a victim. So with that, Dr. Michael, I want to give you a warm welcome to Finding the Voices.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Monica. Good day to you, your viewers, and hope everybody is both COVID and online safe.
Yeah. So before we go into, your work, cyberbullying, I wanted to briefly introduce myself and our viewer, just so that you know the context. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly bring up my page. So let's see. So I am now located in Maryland, but I am originally from India. Can you see the screen?
I can. Aren't you tech savvy? I can see the screen. Yes,
yeah, I love to, tell our guests for people of the world, about where most of our viewers are. So right now I'm here, and obviously you are in New York, so we are quite close by. And I am originally from a place called Manipur. Have you gone to India?
No, ma'am. No, I've not. I would love to. I hear it's quite beautiful.
Yes, but when you go to India, as you see, India is so huge. And I come from the northeastern part of India from a beautiful place called Manipur, which is in the border of India and Myanmar.
Well, if you look over my head, I don't know if it matters, but I have a wonderful picture of Ganesh.
Yeah, I see that. So
yes, I know.
Fascination of
Ganesh is just so cool.
And then I wanted to just show a couple of pictures from my hometown, if you can see that. I bet you haven't seen this kind of ethnic costume.
No.
Yeah, so this is
beautiful.
From one of our beautiful tribe. It's a wedding. And so just, a couple of pictures. Even though it's a very small state, we have very diverse ethnic group with different cultural dress. And as you can see, this is the community where I belong. She's my mom and my mom's friend. And so, different kind of ethnic wear we have. Then from the geographical perspective, this is Zuko lily, one of the lily which blooms only in the month of late May, early June. So people actually time it so that they would go for trekking and catch a glimpse of the lily. But unfortunately, we do have a history of a lot of conflict. And so I have just captured some of the picture for conflict. And I thought I'd just, introduce that just so that you know.
Of course.
Our viewer may not necessarily reside in Manipur, but most of us are origins of Manipur, scattered all over the world, and tuning in. And the main intent for Finding the Voices is because we have a conflict background, we want to see the better side of life. We want to learn. And eventually my mission and vision is peace and love. And so People of the World is created so that, we have expert speakers from all over the world, and we learn from them. And here you are.
Thank you. Thank you for calling me an expert.
Yeah, and professionally, I am a computer science engineer, and I work for one of the healthcare IT company here in Washington D.C. And by passion, as you can see, I do Finding the Voices over the weekend, hosting talk shows, personality development, and also I paint.
I see you've got some
one of,
beautiful, yes, paintings back there.
yeah.
That's your work?
Yes, that's my work. So if you ever want to,
I wish I could do that. I'm
yeah,
not talented in that manner, but wow, that is beautiful.
Thank you. All right. So before we start with your work, I would love to know about you a little bit, your background. Originally, are you from New York? And a little bit of your background.
Yes, I am born and bred in New York. Actually, I was born in what's called the Hudson Valley, which is about 2.5 hours direct north of Manhattan, in a small town called Beacon. Graduated from Beacon High School. Go Bulldogs! I have lived in New York for most of my life. I did go out to Chicago back in the 90s, the early 90s, to do my doctorate degree at Adler University. But I am born, bred, and have always lived in the great state of New York. Presently, I reside in one of the boroughs of New York City called Brooklyn, which I love dearly. And now what I do is I spend, my full-time job. I am the owner. We're called MN Psychological Associates. And we are a group practice providing psychotherapy, supportive validation counseling to the chronically mentally ill. So we have psychologists and social workers at regional adult care facilities. But then after working on the weekends, obviously for the last 10 years, I have spent my time, I call myself a student of cyberpsychology. And I spend my life now, after working on the weekends, researching what I call iPredators, and then also doing volunteer work. After working on the weekends for the last decade, I provide free volunteer help to people that are targeted online. That's me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And to our listeners, while Dr. Michael and me, we are talking, do chime in if you have any questions on, on cyberbullying, cyberstalking, your experience. We would like to make this very engaging. So from childhood, from the time you were small, were you always interested in psychology?
Well, I know it's cheesy. I really don't. If we're going to talk about when I was in 8th grade here in the United States in the late 70s, there was a television show, God bless my parents, God rest their souls, that they used to watch called The Bob Newhart Show. I was a child, very young, and I fell in love with the actress Suzanne Pleshette, who was Bob Newhart's wife. Bob Newhart on the Bob Newhart Show was a psychologist. So I knew then and there, and is that in order to find a Suzanne Pleshette, I had to become a psychologist. So early on, I was fascinated with oceanography, cosmology, which was called astronomy back then, and then psychology. But I guess to say, God rest her soul, Suzanne Pleshette won out. And that is when my interest in the human mind, psychology, grew.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for stepping up. And I also want to thank you ahead of time for your volunteering. I read a little bit about your work. So for all our listeners, let's talk about what you do.
Okay. Well, what I do in terms of, my day job, as I said, I'm a psychologist. I also supervise my other psychologists and social workers. But related to what we're discussing today is iPredator. Mm-hmm. iPredator is a global concept that I originally thought of back in 2008, but I don't enjoy writing too much. So I started to jot stuff down 2008, 2009. And in 2009, I actually authored the concept called iPredator. And what iPredator is a dark side of cyberspace concept. It presents 8 different typologies of online assailants, ranging from the child form of cyberbullying all the way up to the most depraved, that I believe, is online child pornography consumers and distributors. And between those are the other 6. So I wrote that, and we all know we live in the information age. And folks, both children and adults, are becoming enveloped by information communication technology, social media, so forth and so on. So my goal is to be able to introduce these types of online predators.
So you want to speak a little bit about those different types?
Well, I mean, we don't have to go through all 8. What I can do for your viewers is very quickly is give the 3 criteria to know if they themselves, if you are, Ms. Monica, if you're an iPredator, there are 3 criteria. It's very simple. 1, which is the use of information communication technology to target others, to harm, to exploit, to solicit. So that it's the use of information technology. 2 is another, a little bit more difficult, is called self-awareness of causing harm. Now, again, I work with the chronically mentally ill, and not all of them are social media savvy, but the self-awareness of causing harm to others, that is the 2nd criteria. And then the 3rd criteria, which is a sub-concept of iPredator, I call cyberstealth. And what cyberstealth is it's online deception, but it's also creating an online presence so that the target, the victim that you're going after, may or may not know exactly who you are. But if they can identify you using cyberstealth, you set up a system to where I guess politicians call it plausible deniability, to where if you know that I'm your iPredator, I create a scenario to where if I'm apprehended or if I'm punished, in a court system or arrested, not that that happens, I'm able to use plausible deniability. I'm able to use excuses so that I am not convicted of a potential crime. So those are the 3 criteria of the iPredator. And if you meet those 3, you're an iPredator.
So you mentioned about cyber stealth, right? Like the ability or intent for harming, disguising. And then I want to talk from the other side, right, for our viewer, particularly for our listeners and the place where we come from. I know that there are a lot of coverage of victims where in the social media or in the internet, they have been duped, saying that there's a job, right? Or it could be even online romance.
Right.
Can we talk a little bit about those scenarios? How can people be more equipped, right? And of course, some people may say, I mean, how would you believe a person who you have never met? But it is happening, right?
I have actually, again, I have volunteered for over a decade. I've never kept data or statistics because everything is confidential. But I have helped folks that have, and again, not to pass judgment, I am a hopeless romantic, is that I have helped people that have literally, Ms. Monica, they have literally fell in love with a person, an online user that they've never met offline. There was actually 2 people a couple of years back that actually reported to me they fell in love with another online user that was a great distance away, and they never even seen them on a webcam. So there was never even visual confirmation. So when we talk about online dating, online relationships, this goes back to the one primary internet safety tip I can give to everyone. We can do those quickly now. And I say it all the time: personal information, personal information, personal information. The less personal information you share, the lower probability you have of being targeted. All right. Now, when we talk about information in the information age, information communication technology, there are only three ways to manage and manipulate information. We can compile information, we can disseminate information, and we can exchange information. The sharing of information and the exchanging of information, if it includes personal information about yourself, about your loved ones, about your job, your locations, you slowly begin to increase, your probability of being targeted. Now, there are some people, and I'll just use, because most of us are adults, the kids aren't using Facebook like they used to.
Mhm.
But like with Facebook, um, your privacy settings. Several years back, I assisted a woman, and not to pass judgment, but it still occurs today. She had on Facebook had her privacy settings set to public. And
Mhm.
over the course of a week or so, she had announced to her friends and loved ones and talked about it that she was going down to Atlantic City, which is the Jersey Shore here in New York. Wonderful beach, by the way. She announced it and she talked about it. She even posted content where she was leaving the next morning, where she was going, and when she would be back, her and her husband. Well, they returned 10 days later, and guess what, Ms. Monica? Not the entire house, but her house was gutted. Because what happened is obviously a offline criminal, watched and took the information. And once she left, they entered her house and they took all her valuables. So I give this story because it's important for all of us to recognize that what we do online, we may think we're doing it privately, but if we're not careful, everyone, hundreds, if not thousands of people can see us. And that is the most important tip I can give anyone is the less personal information you give, the better.
Right. And I think many people may not be aware of the setting. Of course, the tech savvy people are, but I think it's important for us to balance, right? People wants to come to the social media because there are the positive aspect of connectivity, but we have to also be aware of the privacy setting, because whatever you think you are sharing it only with your friend circle or friend list could be shared publicly. So the setting public, only friends should be used. So that is one of your tips.
Right, and
Not
again,
sharing.
privacy settings is important, but I guess if your privacy setting is set on public, but you spend your social media time letting online users know about your personal aspects of your life, Ms. Monica, it doesn't matter whether your privacy settings are on private or public, you increase the probability of being attacked online. Okay. So personal information, the less personal information, the better. Okay. The second tip, which we can talk about right now, and again, I'm not a prude, but this applies to anyone out there who's in love, who's married, is sexually themed content. Okay. Any sexually themed content, again, you can compile, you can share, and you can disseminate with sexually themed content that is published online. First, as you know, Ms. Monica, is that what we publish online and we think we delete it, it doesn't mean it's deleted from the digital universe. Okay. So if you're engaged, let's say you're in love in an online relationship with somebody, and oh, Ms. Monica, she is the dream of my life. Yet she lives several hundred miles away from me. We're in a relationship and we sext, and occasionally, she sends me, I send her sexually provocative images, and maybe I'm bold enough to send sexually provocative videos. Oh, how wonderful. Well, now, unfortunately, what happens, Ms. Monica and I break up in an adversarial way. And what does Ms. Monica do now? And these are two trending terms. Certainly, you can Google them. Is sextortion and revenge porn.
Mm-hmm.
And these two cyber criminal activities are where I now take all that sexually provocative images, videos, text messages, and I now not only publicly display them, I now send them to your loved ones, to your family, to your job, to your, and that is revenge porn. Okay. Sextortion, though, is sexual blackmail, to where now I take that information, and whether I know you or not, Ms. Monica, I now contact you and say, you know what, Ms. Monica, unless you pay me $500 or you provide and dance for me and give me some more sexually provocative information, I'm going to disseminate this information to your job, to your loved ones, and to everybody in your social system. That is sextortion. And those are two very dangerous situations that are occurring here in the information age.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so now the first thing, right? Of course, it's a tip. We are saying that, do not share such information, private information. Do not share, sexual content, or even if you think like you are in love or whatever, but say that it happened, right? It happened, and the person is been used, or, like told that, okay, I'm going to use those content and send it to your loved one. So the trauma, what would be the next step now?
If
Yeah,
this
if the person has become a victim, the person has, been.
unfortunately, the bad news is when we're talking about online victimization, uh,
Mhm.
and don't get me wrong, it's first and foremost, it is incredibly traumatizing
Yes.
to be targeted online. So whether you're being targeted by a cyber criminal, whether it's an adversarial, ex-boyfriend or girlfriend or loved one, whether you're being, all of the categories, to be an online victim is very stress provoking and very traumatizing. Why? Because of the unpredictable nature of being targeted. All right. One of the things I talk about is, as I'm talking, like with cyberbullying, is which is a child-on-child phenomena where children cyber attack one another. And here's a great example. Okay, I'm in my 50s. When I was a child and I was bullied, well, the difference is when I was a child being bullied, after being beat up or taunted or teased, I was able to leave and run home to my family, my friends, my neighborhood, and that was it. So essentially, Ms. Monica, I had sanctuary. Well, now, here in the information age, that no longer exists. Cyberbullying, okay, is oftentimes it is offline. There's bullying going on at the school or in the playground. But then with cyberbullying, there is no sanctuary. So it occurs, as I say, 24/7, 365. So the child has no way to escape what is going on of being exploited, of being taunted, and being teased. And not to sound too dark, but all of us are at the beginning of the information age, and we are the first generation to be introduced to the concept of cyber bullycide. And
Mhm.
the cyberbully side is when a child takes his or her life, commits suicide because he or she is being targeted online. And that's something, obviously, that wasn't didn't have to be dealt with in a pre-information age world. Now, don't get me wrong, there was teen suicide, but here in the information age, cyberbully side is something that is growing in leaps and bounds.
Mhm. Yeah. So, like you said, right? Like in earlier time, you could leave,
Hmm.
right? You could leave. And of course, there are features like blocking or filtering it out. And blocking is something which I personally use for
Hmm.
Facebook if I have, people who um, are very negative and it's not serving any purpose for what we are here for. Um, and then also I see that it's not only for relations, but some of the young people who are coming up, right? Coming up with maybe um, a show, a song, or whatever be the case. And people have so much of negative comment, and the person is not able to deal with it, and they feel that, oh my God, I don't
Right.
want to, show up. And when you talk about cyber bully site, right?
Well, if I may, Ms. Monica, it's an old adage, I'm sure, because you have a expert, you're skilled in technology. It's an old adage. It's only probably about 10, 15 minutes old. It's called "Don't feed the trolls."
Yeah, don't feed the trolls.
Right. So essentially, very quickly, as you know, what that means is that if you're being defamed, if you're being provoked online, avoid it, block them, remove it as it relates to comments. So, but getting back to the question you asked previously is that if you're being sextorted, if you're being targeted online, as you had said, it can get to the point where it's not about don't feed the trolls. All right.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, here in the United States, and I hate to say we really have yet to set up a system to where people can get help immediately, and it's truly unfortunate. I say this all the time, Ms. Monica. We act, and we are the United States. We are supposed to be one of the top nations on Mother Earth, but yet we act as if we live in a pre-information age world. You know, the vast majority of people, as I said earlier, I volunteer after work and on the weekends. I've been doing it for 10 years. The vast majority of people who call me, they have been told by the system, court systems, law enforcement, that they can't help. Uh,
Mm.
Either because of First Amendment rights, either because of cross state lines, or because they believe there hasn't been physical contact. All right.
Mm.
The loved ones have been told that tell the victim, I hate to use the word online victim, so we'll say target, tells the target that you're being melodramatic, you're crazy, reduce your time online and just get over it and move on. Unfortunately, what that does is, and in psychologically, it isolates the victim target even more so. Hence, when folks are calling me, they are in a state of distress. And many of them have been isolated by their loved ones, by their proverbial community, when law enforcement and the court systems turn their backs. And this, Ms. Monica, is the reality that we're living. And unfortunately, that has to change because we live in the information age.
Mhm.
You know, they say the information age began in the late 70s. The birthday of the internet is 1983. So, from a period of history standpoint, we are at the beginning of a period of history that is likely going to last for the next couple of centuries. Now, the next step in the information age will be the growth of artificial intelligence and virtual reality, but we are at the very beginning of a period of history. So not that it feels good or I'm trying to sugarcoat it, but we are the pioneers of a historical period that's going to last, I believe, for centuries. Unfortunately, we are also the victims, we are the targets, and we are the one that suffers the damage because presently there are no systems in place to help the targeted.
Right, right. So I think just to summarize, right? So we spoke about you, our listener, or me becoming the target, right? So knowing that, okay, you have become a target, and then equipping with handling um, the trauma or the isolation, as you say, right? Like I can very well resonate with you, what you're saying. When you share with your family, they would most likely brush it off. So then you don't have any, yeah, you don't have any outlet. And then the law right now, as you have shared, is not equipped to handle this. And hence the rise of people with trauma, people with having suicidal thoughts, and the need for psychology, the need for coming to you, the need for coming and speaking out and sharing. Would that be a right?
Great question, Ms. Monica. And again, I'm a doctor of psychology. I love my industry. I love, social workers. I love behavioral health care. But again, unfortunately, we live at the beginning of a time where systems are not addressing it. It would be nice, Ms. Monica, where I could say to you right now, well, of course, if you feel traumatized, go
Yeah.
talk to your go find a good psychologist in your area and get some counseling, meet with a social worker. Unfortunately, is that many of those psychologists, many of those behavioral health care professionals, they do not understand the impact of being targeted and being victimized online. So, like law enforcement in the court systems, they tend to, and hopefully that will change. I'm doing my best, Ms.
Yeah.
Monica, is that they would see you, let's say you were targeted, they would likely, and again, this isn't all, that you're being melodramatic, and the psychology, that's called being histrionic, that you're being melodramatic, that you are suffering some form of anxiety, panic disorder, and maybe you need to be medicated. Now,
Mhm.
I'm not against psychotropic medication. I mean, I'm certainly not big pharma, but I do see the relevance of medication. The vast majority of my patients are prescribed psychotropics by our psychiatrist. But my industry, even now, unfortunately, at least here in the United States, does not, if I may, immediately in what's called a biopsychosocial assessment, or which is a data collection tool. So when you come to me as a patient or client, as part of my biopsychosocial assessment, my data collection, most psychologists and behavioral healthcare professionals still do not ask about a patient, a client's online life. And that is important. Why? Because we live in the information age, and most of us spend our lives now online.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. So I think what I'm trying to encourage all of us is, even if you are in that situation where you are a target, it's not the end of the world, right? It's not
Correct?
the end of the world. You don't have to think about committing suicide or be carried with the narrative of the person who is targeting you. Because I see that a lot in young people.
Yes.
I see that a lot, and very talented young people who comes out with an idea, and they are like bashed up in social media, and they're just not equipped to handle that kind of strong words and trolling and comments and things like that. So yes.
Yes, and unfortunately, if you're targeted online, again, whether it's internet defamation, slander, character assassination, being trolled, okay, and I hate to, unfortunately, we don't have systems to deal with it. Now, one of the ideas I presented related to cyber terrorism and cybersecurity, I call it IP 3141. And that means, at least last time I checked, is there's 3,141 counties in the continental United States. What would be great, both federally and privately founded, is every county in this country has a facility, a clinic where the targeted individual, the online victim, can go. And guess what, Ms. Monica? They are listened to, they are believed, and they are educated and advised on what they can do.
Mhm.
And if these practices, facilities, if the information or they find that it involves something that's criminal, they do something about it. I call it
Yes.
IP 3141. Again, presently here, it's 2021. We're in the information age, and citizens of the information age really have nowhere to go.
Right, right. But so in your volunteer hours, right? So what is the common theme? What's happening now? What are people coming for?
The vast majority of people that are calling me is either, again, I'll real quickly. So cyberbullying is a pediatric phenomena. So when I get calls, an adult says to me, I'm getting cyberbullied, I certainly don't correct them.
Mm,
Want to get academic, is
mm,
that cyberbullying, as I said earlier, is a child on child cyber attack.
got it.
Adult form of cyberbullying would either be cyber harassment, internet trolling, and
Mm,
cyber stalking. Okay. The difference between the harassment, the trolling, and the cyber stalking is the most dangerous of those three. Because true cyber stalking, is the repetitive threats of direct or indirect threats of physical harm to you or to your loved ones. That is cyber stalking. So when we're talking about harassment, trolling, and cyber stalking, first and foremost, if you are any of those, obviously the cyber stalking is the most serious, is is to create a dossier, a profile, and not that you're going to be able to use it in a court of law, but hopefully with each year that passes, a time is going to come where law enforcement and the court systems and our loved ones actually believe what's going on is traumatizing.
So what do you suggest, right? Like, because when you're talking about cyber stalking, cyber harassment, right? Um, I personally have had experience, because I do have a public side of my life, right?
Mhm.
Um, and generally, my approach has been block, but I also noticed that some of the people could be so, I guess, intended to stalk, and some other new ID may pop up, right? And then you stalk. So, what would be your recommendation beyond stalking?
The first recommendation is understanding and knowing there are thousands of other individuals that are experiencing what you're experiencing.
Right.
It's also important to know that just because others, your loved ones, the system, do not believe you and they're castigating you for being traumatized, that doesn't mean that it didn't happen, and that it
Mhm.
doesn't mean that it's not stressful. I am telling you, for those viewers, listeners that are about to hear this, I have, in the last 10 years, I have helped, I would say, several hundred. Um, and I am telling you that it is extremely stress provoking.
Yes.
And that is the first step to understand, guess what? It's okay. Now, I have helped individuals that have called me that clearly are suffering from an Axis 1, thought disorder or a mood disorder. They're bipolar, bordering a psychotic episodes. Even with them, when I talk to them, I don't hang up. Okay. I listen to what they have to say. as you know, as psychologist, primary empathy. I hear you, and then I try to advise accordingly. But most importantly, for those of us simple neurotics out there like me, when we're targeted, we have to make sure we don't engage in self-destructive behaviors.
Right.
Monica, I was heavily trolled. I still am trolled now, not as much as I used to be. And folks want to, visit my website, Troll Triad. I was heavily trolled for an entire year, 2014 and 2015, to where one of them actually sent, as funny as it may sound, sent a letter to the New York State Education Department Office of Professional Discipline calling for immediate revocation of my license to practice because what he was alleging, don't laugh, that I engaged in attempted homicide by internet. Now, the New York State Ed Department, when I spoke to them, they laughed, and obviously it fell on deaf ears, but they had to do the investigation anyway. But meanwhile, these three characters attempted to totally not only character assassinate me with my online identity, but try to destroy my career.
Mm-hmm.
And that really occurs. Okay. I was also trolled, another one quickly, by a gentleman, God rest his soul. They found him deceased. He died of sudden sniffing death syndrome. I guess inhalant abuse. He was inhaling, abusing, huffing computer cleaner. They found him with 6 cans. God bless him. He's now left. But he trolled me for an entire year. And what he did, he bought my name in a domain, michaelnuccitelli.net, and he set up a website, a full website, michaelnuccitelli.net, and he began to publish content saying that I supported pedophilia, that I supported, child pornography. He also, and he was an information security professional, God rest his soul, he contacted my ex-wife. She wouldn't speak to him, but he, against his consent, recorded a conversation with my ex-wife's new husband and then published that online. So these are ways that people are now being trolled. Now, for me, Ms. Monica, was I angry at that time? Most certainly. But what has it done? In the big picture, because I'm talking about it now, is that those experiences only validate my theories and my concept about the dark side of cyberspace and what the level, to where online aggressors, they will do anything they can do to hurt you online and to character assassinate.
Yes. No, definitely. I think I acknowledge that there is there, but I want all of us to be better equipped, right? So we have to catch ourselves from falling to self-destruction, which means you have to have a good support system, right?
Most certainly.
Right.
But
if you're,
I'm sorry, Monica, and I agree with you. But unfortunately, even your support system, your best friends, again, this doesn't apply globally to all support systems. Presently, and again, I can only base this from all my research and all the volunteers calls I make, the vast majority of that support system tends to minimize your experience. Now, it's also called victim shaming. All right. Not to say that it doesn't apply in every situation, because you can find good people who actually believe you. But what I spend my time in my volunteer work is saying to folks who are calling me, it's okay. It's really happened. And you're not crazy that you're losing sleep because you're being cyberstalked. All right. So if you can find a functioning, healthy support system, most certainly. But going back, what it means when I say reducing you're becoming a high risk online user, again, it is being mindful of what you're doing online.
You're
And
right.
what we talk about briefly, if interested, is a subconcept of iPredator called odor. Offline distress dictates online response. Or we could move on to other things.
No, no, please, please.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Odor, offline distress, dictates online response is a subconcept of iPredator. And what odor is that however my offline world is going, and that can be, my psychological state globally, it can be my day to day affective and cognitive feelings and emotional. But however my offline world is going has a direct impact. Remember what I said earlier, how I compile, how I disseminate, and how I share information. So Oder says my offline world has a direct impact regarding my online world. Now, your psychologist, behavioral health care workers who are watching this goes, oh, Dr. Mike, that's subjective processing. We all have that. And you know what? You're correct. But the difference is between subjective processing, my perceptual glasses, subjective processing, and odor is the nature of our online interactions. Now, I can't prove it. And many people think I'm crazy, Ms. Monica, but I believe that cyberspace is gradually becoming, if not already is, an extension of human consciousness.
Mhm.
I can't prove it, but it seems to me that when people are targeted online, even though it's not real, because we know cyberspace is an abstract, digital universe, it's artificial, it's not real. But for some reason, we tend to intuit, we tend to believe and experience it as real. So I believe that people that are cyber stalked, okay, let's say, um, offline stalking is very anxiety provoking and creates a lot of fear. But to me, cyber stalking is even more so because of the unpredictable nature and because what I believe, as I say, cyberspace is an extension of human consciousness. So with odor, if you've had a bad day, where let's say you suffer from clinical depression and you go online, if you're not careful, you may engage in high risk online activities, or you may interpret what you're seeing, what you're reading, what you're doing online. You may take that from a depressed person standpoint. So offline distress dictates online response essentially is the psychology of the online user. And how do I make sure I reduce my probability of being targeted? One is understanding that odor exists. Now, Ms. Monica, when you sit down, that doesn't mean you have to be happy, happy, joy, joy. It is understanding that my reality offline has a direct impact to my online identity and actions. And that in and of itself is one tip to reduce your probability of targeting. So if you, Ms. Monica, if you've been drinking all night and you're intoxicated, probably not a good idea to go online right now and have a gab session with your friends or your ex, so forth and so on. If you had a horrible day at work, okay, and you're very stressed, it may not be a good idea to go online and engage in banter with other online users in social media because you may say or you may interpret something that was not meant to be said.
No, this is so beautiful. I love the way you have shared it. An extension of our consciousness. And that's absolutely true, right? What is
Well,
happening?
Ms. Monica, a lot of people think I'm nuts. So thank you. I hope
No,
so.
no, because what your life, what you are doing offline is reflected in online, and your points on, hey, if you are very angry about something, or if you had a couple of drinks and you are venting out, maybe online is not the best way, right? Because you
Yes.
could have misjudged, you could have, your perception could have been different than what it, you know, what really happened. So yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Correct. And if I may, real
Create,
quickly,
yes.
what walks hand in hand to odor is what I call IVI. And this goes back to another prevention tip. IVI is eye predator victim intuition. And what that means, and again, it's on a skill level of novice to expert, but some eye predators are good enough. Again, I believe it's a learned skill, but maybe some of them are just good psychopaths. Is I can go online, not me, but an eye predator who is good at IVI, eye predator victim intuition. They can go online, they can go to your blog, your website. Most of the time, it's your social media accounts, and they can quickly conclude that you would be a good mark, that you would be a good target for them. Now, how is that occurring? Again, remember what I had said earlier about the, God bless the woman who was posting on Facebook about leaving, okay, and going to Atlantic City for 10 days, okay? The IVI, obviously, somebody out there was able to assess quickly, because what the cyber criminal said to himself is, why would she have her Facebook on public? One. Two, even if she had it friends of friends in private, I'm good enough to be able to see it. Why is she talking about the actual dates and times of her leaving to go on vacation? IVI, I would immediately, as an eye predator, know she's a good mark. Now, that applies to all the categories. When we talk about online child predators, all right, they do not go online and look for high self esteem, high functioning, proud, confident children. What they look for are the children who are disgruntled, who are discouraged, who are angry, who are, feeling sadness and sullen. But what those children are doing is they're posting it and they're talking about it online. Online child predators look for that. Okay. Presently, right now, Snapchat is probably one of the most popular social media platforms for children. Young adults, Instagram. And then for us old people, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. But what a child or an adult is publishing, disseminating online, IVI, eye predator victim intuition, which is connected to offline distress dictates online response, those two walk hand in hand onto gauging whether or not, Ms. Monica, you're a good target for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I love this content. So, what you post, right? You're posting your personality. And so, if somebody is really looking out for targets, like you said, people are not looking for, very high self esteem, confident people, because they know that, they couldn't be targets. So, people are looking for disgruntled, unhappy,
Yes.
emotionally vulnerable, right? So, yeah, so thank you for sharing that. We are at 53 minutes. I know we are having a lovely conversation, and I do want to pick some of our questions coming in. Thank you to our listeners. Ngaiboy Haukib, Maibam Vaneshwari, Marchan Sinne, watching from Dimapur. Thank you so much. Miranda has a couple of questions. Good evening, sir, ma'am. I'm interested to know about schizophrenia. In brief, I am currently studying MSc nursing in psychiatric.
Okay. So I'm sorry, forgive me, what is the question?
Okay, so let me pull it up. Can you read that?
I want you to know about the schizophrenia, sir. I'm currently studying MSN. Oh, so she's going to be a psychiatric nurse. Well, what's good about NPs, at least here in the United States, is that they can prescribe medication, psychotropic medications, where, and God bless psychiatrists. My psychiatrist, if he watches us, he's going to be, Dr. Mike, nurse practitioners, people that are NPs, they are wonderful healthcare professionals. But as it relates to schizophrenia, because on my caseload, I probably have, of the 45 patients, 40 patients I see weekly, I would say about a third to a half of them suffer from a thought disorder. And what schizophrenia is a thought disorder where a person has disorganized thinking, and oftentimes to be diagnosed with schizophrenia, they have to have experienced at one time in their life auditory and or visual hallucinations, or they can also experience loosening of associations. There's also, as part of schizophrenia, obviously you've got the auditory visual hallucinations, but there are also elements of delusion where I'm Ms. Monica, I am the new president of the United States. Or if it's a paranoid flavor to the delusion, I'm being targeted by the FBI, by the CIA, and I'm constantly watching my back because they're coming. All right. So schizophrenia is a severe thought disorder that people suffer. The good news is that there are psychiatric psychotropic medications that can help. Okay. And again, unfortunately, in this world presently, mental illness is still seen as a stigma. People are embarrassed. People are very shameful. And oftentimes they don't seek help. So
That's true.
what you're doing is wonderful to one day, if you're not already doing it, helping those that suffer from psychiatric illness. We need many more folks out here helping.
Yeah, yeah. And, like I said, Manipur, my native place, because of the conflict background, there are a lot of people with mental illness, and with what you have said, the stigma, people don't come out, right? So, yeah.
And then the last piece being related to that question, and again, we need to support those that suffer from axis 1, axis 2, dementia, MRDD, but it's also understanding with each passing year, those folks who suffer from psychiatric illness, okay, are becoming more information technology savvy. Now, the vast majority of my patients, because they're adults, they're anywhere from their late 30s to their, to their 70s. These are adult folks. Most of them, okay, I would say of the 40, do not use social media. They are just being introduced and being given, the federal government sanctioned smartphones, cell phones, but they are not having to deal with being trolled but it is only a matter of time. So of my 40 plus patients, 3 of them, because they are on the mild side of psychiatric illness, albeit they're still in an adult facility, but because they are high functioning, they are beginning to join and ask Dr. Nuccitelli about Facebook. What is Instagram? What is sexting? With each passing year, that group of those, the millennials, are going to be information communication technology reliant. So that entire segment of the mentally ill population, like us, they will be enveloped by what we're talking about today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, so I want to pick up 2 more questions. So Miranda continues to ask, and this is more relevant to what we spoke about, cyber harassment. So suicidal thoughts, tendencies occur in most of the victim. So tips which will be helpful as a parent, guardian, and a teacher so that we can pass and educate them? Is it correct to take the help of the law if in case? So I
Okay,
know.
there's a lot of questions, and
Yeah.
maybe in a future show we can talk about digital dinner. It's an idea I've introduced several years ago. But what we'll talk about today is I strongly suggest you create evidence, okay? And evidence is something that you can print out that, shows black and white, and we don't want reams of evidence.
Mm,
Obviously, if you have it and you're going to law enforcement, because as I said earlier, is you want to create a profile or a dossier and you want to go to law enforcement. And again, please understand where we're coming from. The vast majority of law enforcement are going to poo-poo it, but what you want at least is a written complaint form that's been filed.
mm,
Are they likely to do anything about it? Not likely, unless it is so egregious, unless, forgive me, it borders evil. They're not likely to do anything about it. But if you're being harassed, if you're being stalked, if you're being trolled, and it's serious enough, then of course, go to law enforcement and present it. The first thing they're going to ask you is, do you know who it is? So if it's an unidentified assailant, then they're going to listen even less. But at a minimum, it's getting that document to put in your profile, because the thing is the question of the iPredator, are they going to continue to target you, or are they going to get their jollies and ha-has and move on to another victim? That's what it comes down to.
mhm. Okay, so I think it's good for you to set the expectation that the law enforcement,
I hate to
right,
say
is
that too.
not there yet, but it is important that if we feel that it is gone too bad, that we need to at least, complain and have that on file.
Yes, and please, Ms. Monica, I don't want to. I am pro blue. I think law enforcement is wonderful. I've helped law enforcement officials, both because they're obviously people too, and they get targeted. So I am very pro law enforcement. I support the legal system. It's just that we act as if we live in a pre-information age world, and that's what we have to change. As it relates early about parenting, if a child is being trolled, being cyber stalked, it is, doing your best to listen. Okay. A lot of the, when I've helped parents, okay, unfortunately, and if any of the parents see this that I've helped, I'm not talking about you, or maybe I am, and you won't see this, is that parents will chastise their child and tell the child, turn it off, delete it, block it. Now, blocking is a good tip, okay? Block the cyberbully, block the troll, okay? But oftentimes, parents will minimize the child's trauma, and the distress, and tell them, you know what? You're not going to use the internet. You can't use Snapchat. Or worst thing, which I've done, is where, come on, Ms. Monica, give me the smartphone, give me that cell phone, and I'm going to put it away. And when you're ready to be responsible online, then I'll give you your cell phone back. That's nothing more than victim shaming.
Mm,
So it is important as parents is to not punish a child if they are being victimized by taking away what they live for. Okay. As I said, cyberspace is an extension of human consciousness. I can't prove this yet, but the tween and the teen, prepubescent and puberty, children that are early to teen to late teen, for them, unlike you and I, Ms. Monica, for them, their online presence and their online world is far more important than for you and I.
mhm,
I believe that for today's children, children of the information age, I'm even willing to say that their online presence, their online perception has a direct impact into their identity development.
mhm.
Can't prove
Absolutely.
that.
Yes.
But if we assume children who are going through puberty, they're maturing, They're going from where the parents are, the person they look to, they now go to their friends and their peers. That period of puberty, I believe their online worlds is playing a role during that development. I can't prove it, but I believe it to be so.
Yes. No, I believe it too. And, like you said, our younger generation, the online presence is coming up to be more important than our generation, right? And in times of COVID, now it's more increasing. So I think our conversation is very timely. One last question. I know we are at time. Is there a possibility that anyone can see my messenger conversation with my friends? If yes, how to protect from it? Comes from my beneficiary.
Okay, well, I guess, I mean, obviously you can, I don't know when you talk about Messenger and I am tech impaired. So when we talk about technology, maybe Ms. Monica can answer that more educatively. To me is whatever, controls you can use, whatever way you can make sure that it's private, obviously, but most importantly, even if you're using Messenger and even if it's protected and even if you think nobody can access it, again, the less personal information you share, the better. Because
Yes.
God forbid, the recipient of whoever you're text messaging with, let's say the two of you, and hopefully that doesn't happen, become enemies. All that information that he or she has, okay, it can be used against you. So the most important thing for everyone is to practice what's called digital citizenship. And digital citizenship is nothing more than being, practicing gratitude, being humble. And if we're going to, disagree, I don't mind bantering, okay? But if I notice that it's going to start getting a little bit adversarial, I'll say to you, you know what, Ms. Monica? We'll have to agree to disagree. And then
Yeah.
that's it. Digital citizenship, if you can practice that by being supportive of others, being respectful, well, then your probability of being hacked, of being compromised is greatly reduced. Not guaranteed, but greatly reduced.
Oh, wow. I love that. I learned a lot of new words, new concept, digital citizenship. I love that. Yes. And then if it is not going anywhere, end it with let's agree to disagree.
Exactly.
Love it. What a lovely way to end. Yes. And my beneficiary, from my perspective, yes, there could be security for Messenger, WhatsApp, or whatever. But, I would definitely echo Dr. Michael's thought. Whatever you're passing over could be retained, and you don't want to say things which might become a problem in future, right? Because everything is recorded. So yes, I would be careful on what you share in the messenger or private message. So I have just pulled up Dr. Michael's website, iPredator .co. It is being shared in my link also. Do check it out. Is there any content here which you want to bring attention to in your page?
Yeah, iPredator is to go is either .co, no M after the .co, .org or .net. All of those URLs go to my website, which is my website is public domain. It's free. You don't even have to give an email or any personal information because that's anti-online safety. So essentially, all of my content is free to online users. As you see there is the iPredator definition, dark psychology, which is the concept that I wrote in 2006. And if you scroll all the way up, you will see a list. Wow, you are goodness, Monica. Okay. You'll see adult assessments, professional assessments, pediatric assessments. Those have drop downs, and those are my 26 checklists and inventories. And you can download those. They're in PDF. and you don't have to give any personal information. So whether you want to know cybercrime, cyberbullying, cyberstalking, parenting, those 26 assessments are free, public domain. And even if you print them out and you don't like them, blow your nose with them and throw them in the garbage. But most importantly is all my work is free.
And you have books published?
No, ma'am.
I've been yeah, I thought you had 2 books published, and I was looking for it.
No, I don't say unfortunately. I don't enjoy writing. I've been asked, is to take. I mean, if you look at my work, iPredator, there's got to be maybe 2 books there.
I know. Like when I see the drop down and all those PDF, that's what that led me to think. So maybe you might consider.
Yeah, well, maybe someone to help me. Maybe I need a ghostwriter. I think I don't want to. I know it sounds corny. I think a book would be cheesy for me, given everything that I've done is free. Yeah,
I think the way I look at it is, the more equipped we are, right? All this content, what you're sharing, it's equipping us so that we don't become the target. We become smarter than them, right?
So just for your viewers, everything at the website, as I said, is free. It's public domain, and if you like it, that's great. If you don't like it, crumple it up and throw it in the garbage and move on. But what I am asking your viewers and all of us is, particularly parents, is to, and it doesn't have to be Google, a search engine, is to, do internet safety tips for parents.
Yes.
Online safety. If you don't like my work, at least occasionally go online and do yourself a favor and Google digital citizenship. That's not my term. Google parenting tips, all of that. And again, you don't have to have a doctorate degree like me to practice online safety. It's just the understanding that, and this is the last thing I want to say, we live in a world right now to where if you're not the one being targeted online or your child, we tend to minimize the experience. And what I'm asking society and the community at a whole is, no matter who you are, no matter where you're from, if you're being targeted online, it is taking a second and understanding, if this is a loved one, maybe believing them and maybe believing that they're being stressed and they're traumatized, and not immediately discounting their experience as, oh, it's only having it online. At least they don't have a knife to your throat.
Yeah. And also I see that there is that gap between the youth and the parents, because the parents didn't grow up in an online world. So, I'm sure that we are going to have you back, because the online world is going to continue, and we have to be always equipped, with smart ways how we can be digital citizenship. So with that, I'm going to end today's show. Is there anything you want to say before we end the show, Dr. Michael?
No, Ms. Matt. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to educate your viewers.
Yeah, and thank you to everyone who is watching. Keep sharing, because we all have this responsibility to learn. And when we show up as the digital citizen with what we are supposed to, then we will have lesser attack. And even if there are attacks and trolls which will be there, we will know how to handle them. So thank you so much. All right. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.